Prototype was a dark and bloody open-world game set in the city of Manhattan during the outbreak of a mutant virus. You played an overpowered mutant anti-hero by the name of Alex Mercer, and were given the kind of freedom and superpower that most games don't allow. It was an interesting concept and certainly had its moments, but on the whole it was quite repetitive and didn't really hit the mark.
But now the sequel is here, and in Prototype 2 you take the role of James Heller. He's a former soldier looking to exact his revenge on Mercer for the death of his family. But after tracking him down, he's infected with the same virus himself. He then sets out to find information about the virus, about Mercer's plans, and the sinister organization Blackwatch that started it all.
I gave you the Mercer virus. That's what they call it, right? The same virus 2 years in a row. Wake up, Heller. This is no viral outbreak. This is a bioweapons test.
Let it come to you. Let the truth sink in.
All units engage targets as soon as they're within range.
There's a catch-up video on the previous game's story, but honestly the whole thing is a bit cliche and uninteresting story-wise, both in the previous game and this one if you ask me. Every cutscene or plot device is all something scientist, something evil corporation, something mutant virus.
Gentek's planning some new high-risk field tests. They've modified their protocols on infected versus civilians. Expect a body count increase.
The virus creatures are living on a completely carnivorous diet. How? I mean, what does the virus do that changes such a basic attribute?
You might be overthinking this a bit.
I just struggled to care.
Yeah, me too. I did like the use of full motion video though. Always good to see a bit of full motion making a comeback. It was such a shame because I really wanted to be involved in this story and this character, and the trailer set it up to be a really cool idea for a story, and maybe we'd learn a lot about James and build a connection to him there. But whatever setup of government betrayal or vengeance for his family is pretty much lost right from the beginning because it just becomes angry phone calls from random people that we don't know or care about.
I heard a lot of things. Most of it bad.
Yeah, as much as I hate that archetype of the damsel in distress or the trapped girlfriend, at least that gives you something to work towards, something to fight for that you really genuinely care about. But for those of you who don't really care about the story anyway, you'll be happy to know that Prototype 2 still excels at what it did so well in the first game, letting you cause havoc in the freedom of an open world environment with quite possibly one of the coolest movement systems ever designed for a video game.
Yeah, that parkour and glide system is super impressive, and I like that you start out with a lot of the abilities that you had to work so hard for in the first game.
Absolutely. I mean, being a fan of free running in games, this is right up my alley and then some. I mean, this is just the ultimate freedom. Running, jumping, gliding, climbing. It's just designed so well and it makes the city an absolute joy to navigate.
Yeah, there aren't many games that let you leap from building to building like this, which is a bit of a gamer's dream come true. He's a bit like the Incredible Hulk, actually. In fact, I'd love to see an Incredible Hulk game with this engine. Someone do it. There's a noticeable upgrade to the visuals too. And the whole intro to the game is packed with a lot more action than its predecessor, and that will pull you through even if the story doesn't. There's some pretty gruesome moments too, and that fits in with the dark themes of the game.
Yeah, plus it really puts the power in your hands of how you control Heller and his actions towards civilians. Because of the kind of mutant powers you have and how fast you can move, so many of your actions just won't have consequence.
Missions consist mostly of infiltrating various Blackwatch bases around the city, which have been divided into 3 zones. In addition to all of your various mutant combat abilities and parkour, like Alex Mercer, you can shapeshift into the form of targets that you consume, and it's by using the stealth mechanic that you can slip in unnoticed.
It feels pretty awesome knowing that no walls are high enough to keep you out, doesn't it?
Yeah, and gliding into a military compound is a piece of cake. Hey guys, what's happening? Nothing to see here. Best to go about your business.
I thought it was a little bit unbelievable though, just how much you're able to get away with.
Yeah, in most games that require a bit of stealth, normally, you know, one person spots you and your cover's blown, but here you're literally gliding above them and landing and crashing down and jumping off walls, and they don't even bat an eyelid.
Running up the side of a building, that's not suspicious at all.
That's totally fine, I see it all the time.
I know at one point I was in disguise trying to exit a science lab quietly, but instead of hitting the button to open a door, I accidentally did a backflip. Oops, hope no one thought that was suspicious. No? Okay then.
Access granted.
Mind you, half the time it's easier and faster just to take the loud and messy approach anyway.
We have an intruder. Guard the entrance. Protect Dr. Koenig.
Although you might not get certain bonuses that come with completing a mission undetected.
Other missions will require you to use a kind of sonar ability to hunt and consume certain scientists for backstory or plot information that will start a new quest stream. If you take the stealthy approach, you can't consume your target if they're being watched by another enemy, so you have to slowly consume all those that are watching until no one is left but your target.
And if you blow your cover when you have multiple targets, they'll actually scatter and make a run for it, making them pretty tricky to chase down. While a lot of the game is quite violent, the consume animation is fairly okay. You sort of just assimilate them, so I admit I took some pleasure in running around and catching and eating everyone. Hey, where are you going, silly Billy? I'm gonna eat you.
You're coming with me, Doc.
Unfortunately, much like the last game, the missions do get repetitive pretty quickly. Each military compound looks identical to the last, and there's very little variation. There is some joy to be had when you're ripping those mountain guns off tanks and helicopters.
Oh my god! Hostiles just ripped our rockets off!
And of course, you can always start your own trouble by just causing mayhem and wait for a strike team to arrive.
I have to say though, I usually hate timed race missions, but here I really love them just because that parkour system is just so easy and wonderful to use that it was a joy to do them. But in general, yeah, there's a lot of repetition with these missions and objectives. I really wish they'd made it more interesting. I mean, how many guys in hazmat suits can there be for me to find and take out?
I still enjoyed the combat, Hex. The way you can chain together all your blocks and dodges and attacks and pick up things and throw them, and so much is destructible. It all works quite well. Use of your mutant abilities is gruesome and impressive. I loved going all Wolverine. Side missions and locating hidden boxes around the city will reward you with further upgrades to your mutations, and different enemies will require you to employ different attacks or defense tactics to take them down. And there's some great finishes and takedown animations too. It's all just so fluid, Hex. So few games get that kind of rhythm down pat, and Prototype does it very well.
I love how plentiful rocket launchers are too. They're so handy, especially because those pesky helicopters are always hanging around.
I usually just throw a car at them.
Yeah, you can do that as well. I think this works well as an action sandbox title. I mean, there's a real maniacal joy in the freedom you have here.
Yeah, and I love how you start out so overpowered too, and yet you still get a sense of reward when you complete a mission. They always give you something at the end of it.
Yeah, it just sucks they didn't take this idea further, you know? It's much like Assassin's Creed 1, which was really quite repetitive and simple, just evolved into this beautifully fleshed out sequel with Assassin's Creed 2. But with Prototype 2, apart from, you know, looking better and really refining that free running movement, it just felt like more of the same with very little expansion on that original idea.
I agree, and Prototype has always reminded me a lot of Infamous, and this reminds me of the sequel to Infamous, which really was just more of the same but with refined ideas. But at least with Infamous you have that story to pull you through. This is a well-made game and you can live out your dark fantasies consequence-free, but I think if you played the first one, there'll be much less impact here and you won't enjoy it as much. So I'm giving it 6.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
It's 7 from me.